Trump and Netanyahu just did this on camera. Is this biblical prophecy? On July 7, 2025, President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stood together at the White House, cameras rolling, celebrating their work on the Abraham Accords. But what if I told you that this seemingly innocent diplomatic moment might be the setup for the most important prophecy in human history? Trump welcomes Netanyahu for their third White House meeting since Trump's second term began in January. A record for any foreign leader. Think about that. No other world leader has had more face time with Trump in 2025 than Netanyahu. That's not just diplomacy, that's alliance. They discussed Gaza's future, Iran's threat, and expanding the Abraham Accords, the 2020 deal that normalized relations between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. But then, Netanyahu did something that sent shockwaves through the room. He surprised Trump with a Nobel Peace Prize nomination, saying he's forging peace, as we speak, in one country after another. Let's pause for a second. You're watching these two leaders, all smiles, talking peace and power. Maybe you're thinking, this is just politics. Or maybe you're feeling a chill, wondering if there's more going on. I want you to keep that question in your head. What if this moment's bigger than it looks? Because we're about to see why some Christians are sounding the alarm. But to understand why this meeting has prophetic implications, we need to go back to where it all started. We've seen what happened on July 7th, 2025. But to understand why it matters, we need to go back to 2020, when Trump and Netanyahu brokered a deal that shocked the world. This is the foundation, and maybe something more. September 15th, 2020. The Abraham Accords were signed. This wasn't just a treaty, it was a geopolitical earthquake. Trump called it the dawn of a new Middle East, a historic leap after decades of Arab-Israeli tension. But here's what most people don't realize. The numbers behind these accords are staggering. By 2024, trade between the UAE and Israel alone reached $2.5 billion. Tourism exploded. Security partnerships against Iran flourished. Named for Abraham, the shared patriarch of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, these accords aimed for something unprecedented: interfaith unity in the most divided region on earth. But not everyone was celebrating. Palestinians felt betrayed, arguing the accords sidelined their statehood hopes. Iran raged against the normalization. Traditional enemies of Israel watched in horror as Arab nations chose prosperity over ideology. And then came 2025. Trump, back in the White House, pushed to expand the accords aggressively. So, Trump and Netanyahu are doubling down, pushing a deal that's uniting nations around Israel. Sounds like peace, right? But here's what's got some Christians on edge. The Bible talks about a covenant like this, one that looks good but hides danger. Ever heard of the treacherous treaty? Yeah, we're going there next. Now, let's turn to the Bible and unpack the prophecy that's got X buzzing. The cornerstone passage is Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. This verse describes a 7-year treaty between a powerful leader and many nations, centered around Israel. But here's the terrifying part. It's broken halfway through with an abomination of desolation. This is what biblical scholars call the treacherous treaty, the deal that marks the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. But Daniel isn't the only prophet who warns about this. 2 Thessalonians 2:3 describes the man of sin, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Revelation 13:1-18 paints an even more detailed picture of this beast with global power, deceiving the world with signs and wonders, demanding worship from every nation, tribe, and tongue. Now here's where it gets interesting and controversial. Some Christians are looking at the Abraham Accords and seeing eerie parallels. The Accords are Israel-centric, check. They involve many nations, check. They promise peace in the most volatile region on earth, check. And Trump's 2025 push to add more nations, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, is expanding this coalition even further. Let's get real for a moment. You're hearing this prophecy, a deal, a betrayal, an antichrist, and maybe you're feeling a chill, thinking, could this be happening now? Or maybe you're skeptical, wondering if it's all hype. Wherever you're at, I want you to ask, what if the Bible's warning us about moments like this? But here's what we need to understand. We're not saying the Accords are the treaty, but could they be a stepping stone? Could Trump and Netanyahu's moves be setting a stage? The parallels are too striking to ignore. Let me walk you through what biblical scholars call the covenant checklist, the specific criteria that Daniel's prophecy establishes. Criterion number 1. He shall confirm a covenant. The Hebrew word gabar means to strengthen or make stronger. This isn't creating something new. It's strengthening something that already exists. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, are now being strengthened and expanded in 2025. Criterion number 2, with many. The original accords involved Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, multiple nations. Trump's 2025 expansion is targeting Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon. That's many by any definition. Criterion number 4. Israel-centric Daniel's covenant specifically involves Israel and is broken by desecrating the temple. The Abraham Accords are entirely focused on normalizing relations with Israel. There's one word in Bible prophecy that could change everything, and most people have missed it. That word is confirm. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Now here's where it gets interesting. The prophecy doesn't say create. It doesn't say write. It doesn't say negotiate. It says confirm. Do you see the massive implications of this single word choice? Could this mean the Antichrist won't sign a brand new deal, but strengthen one that already exists? What if the covenant Daniel prophesied about is already sitting on someone's desk right now? And could that deal already be in front of us right now? The answer might shock you. This does not confirm that this is the treacherous treaty, but here's what should make you pay attention. If Daniel said the Antichrist will confirm the covenant, that means someone else may create it first. Think about the implications of that statement. He doesn't have to start from scratch. He doesn't need to be a master negotiator. He just steps in at the perfect moment. He gives it global power with supernatural authority. He makes it stick through methods the original architects never imagined. He rides on a wave that's already in motion. And that wave? It's building momentum right now. And the Abraham Accords? Here's what's truly fascinating. They already involve many, just like Daniel predicted, and they're still growing. More nations joining, more influence expanding, more power consolidating. It's the perfect setup for someone who knows how to use it. The Abraham Accords are named after Abraham, a spiritual father to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. One name, three faiths, unprecedented unity. It's one of the first modern agreements to unite the three major faiths, which fits perfectly with the religious deception we're warned about. What if everything we're watching unfold right now isn't random? What if it's precisely orchestrated? What if the covenant Daniel saw isn't coming someday in the future, but is already taking shape in our headlines today? What if the word confirm was chosen specifically because God wanted us to recognize the pattern when it started happening? The question isn't whether a covenant will come. The question is whether we'll recognize it when someone steps forward to confirm what's already been established. And that someone may be closer than we think. Are you watching? Are you ready? Because if this is what Daniel saw, the clock isn't just ticking. It's almost run out. Here's something that should make every believer's blood run cold. The Bible doesn't warn us about war in the end times. It warns us about peace, false peace, deceptive peace, peace that makes the world drop its guard right before judgment falls. Trump and Netanyahu aren't just talking about ending conflicts. They're talking about transforming the entire Middle East into a paradise. But what if that paradise is exactly what the Bible warns us about? Let me show you what the Scripture says about end times peace. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Daniel 8:25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Notice that phrase, by peace shall destroy many. The Antichrist doesn't conquer through war. He conquers through peace. He solves problems. He brings prosperity. He makes life better for everyone, until he doesn't. Now look at what Trump and Netanyahu are promising through the Abraham Accords expansion. Economic prosperity, technological advancement. But here's what's really chilling. This peace is working. The Abraham Accords have already transformed relationships that seemed impossible to change. Ancient enemies are becoming allies. Trade is flourishing. Tourism is booming. Technology is being shared. What if this isn't just successful diplomacy? What if this is supernatural deception operating at the highest levels of government? But there's something else happening that most people are missing. If you want to understand the true scope of what Trump and Netanyahu are building, you need to understand the Saudi Arabia factor. Because everything, absolutely everything, depends on bringing the kingdom into the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia isn't just another Arab nation. It's the keeper of Islam's holiest sites. It's the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. It's the nation that every other Muslim country looks to for religious leadership. If Saudi Arabia normalizes with Israel, it doesn't just change the Middle East. It transforms Islam itself. And Trump knows it. At their July 7th meeting, Trump told Netanyahu, Saudi Arabia is the big prize. We get them. We get everyone. He wasn't exaggerating. Intelligence sources suggest that at least 6 other Arab nations are waiting for Saudi leadership before making their own moves toward Israel. But here's what makes this prophetically significant. The Bible specifically mentions Arabia in end times prophecy. Isaiah 21 speaks of judgment coming upon Arabia, while Ezekiel 27:21 mentions Arabia and all the princes of Kedar as trading partners with the commercial empire of the last days. More importantly, Revelation 17:12 speaks of 10 kings who give their power to the beast for 1 hour. Could the Abraham Accords expansion be creating this coalition of regional leaders who will eventually submit to a single authority? The numbers are staggering. If Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords, the coalition would represent over 400 million people, combined GDP of over $4 trillion, control of 60% of global oil reserves, oversight of Islam's holiest sites, military cooperation against Iran. Here's what most people don't realize. The Abraham Accords have already changed the conversation around the Temple Mount. For the first time in decades, there's serious discussion about Jewish rights to the site, interfaith cooperation in Jerusalem, and shared administration of holy places. At their July 7th meeting, Trump and Netanyahu didn't just discuss Gaza and Iran. According to sources, they also talked about Jerusalem's future, religious freedom, and what one insider called maximizing access for all faiths. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Saudi normalization that Trump is pushing would require unprecedented religious tolerance. The Saudis would need to accept Jewish worship in Jerusalem. They would need to acknowledge Israel's sovereignty over the city. They would need to embrace interfaith cooperation. What if the price of that cooperation is shared religious space on the Temple Mount? Tells us the Antichrist will sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. For 2,000 years, Christians have wondered how this could happen without a temple. But what if the Abraham Accords expansion creates the political framework for temple reconstruction? Think about it. If Israel has normalized relations with Saudi Arabia and multiple Arab nations, if there's a comprehensive peace plan for the Palestinians, if there's regional economic prosperity and security cooperation, why wouldn't Israel rebuild the temple? And here's the kicker. It wouldn't be controversial. It would be celebrated as the ultimate symbol of interfaith cooperation and regional peace. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has already prepared everything needed. The vessels, the priestly garments, the architectural plans. Red heifers for purification have been born and are being raised according to biblical specifications. Everything is ready except the political will. What if Trump and Netanyahu's expanding alliance creates that political will? Everything we've discussed comes down to one crucial element: Iran. Because Iran isn't just Israel's enemy. But here's what's prophetically significant about the Iran factor. The Bible specifically mentions Persia, modern Iran, as part of the end times coalition that attacks Israel. Ezekiel 38:5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. All of them with shield and helmet. What if the Abraham Accords expansion and the Israeli-Arab alliance is exactly what provokes Iran to form the Ezekiel 38 coalition? What if Trump and Netanyahu's success in isolating Iran is what forces Iran to ally with Russia and Turkey for the prophesied invasion? The timeline is chilling. Abraham Accords expand, isolating Iran. Iran's nuclear program is destroyed. Iran allies with Russia and Turkey. The Ezekiel 38 coalition attacks Israel. God intervenes supernaturally. The world recognizes God's power. The stage is set for the Antichrist's rise. Here's what should terrify and thrill every believer. Prophecy isn't just being fulfilled. It's being fulfilled at light speed. Things that seemed impossible just 5 years ago are happening in months. Relationships that took decades to build are forming overnight. Problems that appeared unsolvable are being solved with stunning speed. We're watching prophetic fulfillment on fast forward. Daniel 12:4 speaks of the last days. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Many shall run to and fro. Global travel and communication. Knowledge shall be increased. Information explosion. But there's another verse that's even more relevant. Daniel 9:26 speaks of events happening with a flood. Rapidly, overwhelmingly, unstoppably. That's exactly what we're seeing. The Abraham Accords are expanding like a flood. Middle East relationships are changing like a flood. Prophetic events are unfolding like a flood. But here's what the acceleration factor means for believers. If prophecy is being fulfilled this quickly, how much time do we have left? We've covered 9 truths about Trump, Netanyahu, and the Abraham Accords. But the 10th truth is the most important of all. What you do with this information will determine your eternal destiny. Because here's what's happening right now. Whether you recognize it or not, the stage is being set for the final act of human history. The Abraham Accords expansion is creating the coalition Daniel prophesied. The Middle East peace Trump and Netanyahu are building could enable temple reconstruction. The isolation of Iran might provoke the Ezekiel 38 invasion. The acceleration of prophetic events suggests we're running out of time. But here's the beautiful truth. God doesn't give us prophecy to scare us. He gives it to prepare us. Luke 21:36. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Watch. Pray. Be ready. The question isn't whether these events are prophetic. The parallels are too precise to ignore. The question is whether you'll be ready when the final act begins. Because here's what the Bible promises. Before the Great Tribulation, before the Antichrist's revelation, before the darkest period in human history, there will be a rapture. The church will be caught up to meet Jesus in the air. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. But only those who are watching, praying, and ready will escape what's coming. The Abraham Accords might be just successful Middle East diplomacy, or they might be the foundation for the covenant that triggers the 7-year tribulation. The expansion to Saudi Arabia might just be smart geopolitics, or it might be the final piece that completes the prophetic puzzle. We've shown you the connections. We've walked through the scriptures. We've examined the timeline. We've seen the acceleration. Now it's your turn to decide. What will you do with this information? Will you dismiss it as coincidence and continue living as if nothing's changed? Will you acknowledge the parallels, but assume you have plenty of time to get ready? Or will you recognize that the stage is being set for the end times, and prepare your heart, your family, and your life for what's coming? Because if we're right, if the Abraham Accords expansion is setting up the prophetic sequence, if Trump and Netanyahu are unwitting players in a divine drama, if the acceleration we're witnessing is the final sprint to the finish line, then time is running out. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. The stage is set. The players are in position. The final act is about to begin. Where will you be when the curtain rises?